Hi guys, my name's Corey Simmons, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to use the Gumby framework. And we're going to break this up into two parts. In the first part, we'll just use normal CSS, and in the second part, we'll use all the cool Sass mix-ins and stuff like that. So to get started, go to gumbyframework.com, and they just came out with 2.5 as of the time of this screencast. And you can, if you scroll down to the bottom, like you can see some cool sites built with Gumby framework. And a lot of these do like some pretty advanced stuff, and then some of them are more simple, and we'll show you like the basics of Gumby. You can go check out some of the features. They've got a grid. The grid's pretty neat. It's got like 2 grids in it. So you've got your basic grid, like your primary grid, which is 12 columns, and then your hybrid grid, which is like your secondary grid. So you can use these like side by side. So you can have like your 12 column grid, and then you can have your 16 column grid. And there's pushing, pulling, and that's how you do your source ordering. So say you've got like a navigation bar next to some text or something in your markup, and you want that text to be first in your markup. So like on desktop, you want it to show up first in your navigation bar, to like be off to the side or something. With pushing and pulling, you can reorganize that for whenever it goes to mobile or like tablet or something. So that's what source ordering is anyway. You can center columns just by applying the class of centered to them. We got some cool tile stuff, and one of the things about Gumby, and this isn't like unique to Gumby, a lot of frameworks do this, is you have to use like specific markup to be able to use certain features. But just keep that in mind. So if something's not working for you, like if you tried applying 2-up tiles to a div and all of the items inside that were divs, like it wouldn't work. So just keep that in mind. Like if you're trying to apply a class and it's not working, try to go back and like look at the documentation and copy the exact markup they have, and then it'll work. Nested grids work similar to other frameworks. Like you just start off with your row, specify some classes like 6 columns, and then inside of that we want to nest this new row. So whenever we create a new row, then it resets our 12 column grid. So we got 10 and 2. Oh, and the hybrid grid thing, the secondary grid thing, you have just wrap your row or apply the 16 call grid to it, and then you'll get your secondary grid. So that's the grid, the gist of it. There's a UI kit with buttons and all that nice stuff. You got your buttons, you've got which again, like you need to wrap these in their own div. You can't just apply these classes to an anchor or button or something. It won't inherit all the styling. But yeah, you've got like your sizing, your like rounding for your elements. They've got some little badges, so if like you want to alert somebody they've got unread messages or something like that, those are nice for that. Some little labels. One of the cool things about Gumby is that it's got like this theme. So like the primary color is always going to be that blue. Although you can edit that in your settings file. You can change all of these colors to whatever you want. But yeah, like if you specify, primary badge, your primary badge is going to be the same color as your primary label. So that's pretty nice. Like whenever you're just theming up a site, and you can just change like one color and it changes all of these elements. It's got some pretty form stuff. With your forms, you need to wrap them in an element with a class of field, like each input. Maybe not each input, but let's see. Yeah, you need to wrap things with an element. the class of field. Maybe not. Okay, so here are two elements, two inputs within the same field, and they have an extra wide, or an X wide, and X narrow, which is pretty nice. If we scroll down, we can see it's got some validation stuff, just some styling for validation. Something is successfully entered, like somebody enters all the correct criteria, then you can give it a class of success or warning, danger. And I believe they have a validation JavaScript plugin where you actually you actually have to validate it in the JavaScript, but I think that it automatically will apply these classes and stuff, depending on if it's valid, or like if you try to submit the form and it's invalid, then it'll give a danger box or warning box to your input. You have conjoined inputs that work like, you take your element, you give it a class of prepend if you want something on the front of it, and then as always field. Then you give it this span with the joined, and it doesn't have to be a span. Like over here you can see that it's a div with an anchor inside, it says go. So but you do have to give it the class of a joined. It gives you some fancy select boxes just out of the box. Again, this is one of those things like where you want to use specific markup. You don't have to use a list item, but you do have to like have a class of field, and then nested within that you need a class of picker, and then you can just put your select box as normal. You get some nice field sets, just look pretty with the labels that you can actually click on that'll highlight the field, and you can make those inline and they'll go side by side, and if you don't apply the class of inline, the label will go on top. Some pretty radio buttons, checkboxes. The navigation's pretty cool. As you get smaller and smaller, let's go find it. Okay, it'll give you this hamburger style navigation just by default, which is pretty nice since it works on my Android at least. So, and again, like this is one of those things that in particular you want to copy the markup, because some of these things that have like classes, like this class of toggle does something special with JavaScript where like it'll find the class of toggle. I believe this Gumby trigger right here is actually kind of messed up. You don't need this arrow in the row right there, since it'll find the nav1 and then it'll find the UL inside that, which is down here. So just whenever you go to make one of these menus, you can just copy and paste this markup right here, and then just edit out that bracket row right there. And then just change out your logo, change out the links. It'll find this UL, or maybe it'll find all ULs. No, the first UL. Okay. Yeah, it'll find the first UL that it comes across after finding this ID. Something you can do with Gumby is if you give it a class of pretty to certain elements, they'll get like this gradient background, kind of like a Bootstrap 2. And if you don't, then it defaults to the whole flat look. Cool thing about Gumby is it's got like a lot of these attributes that are like Gumby whatever. And with the navigation in particular, you can apply like a Gumby fixed top to this div up here to the nav bar. And what happens is like, so look at this this gradient nav bar. Like as we scroll down, it would just get stuck right there on the top of the screen, and then like we keep scrolling and it would stay up there. So that's what like the Gumby fixed position top thing does. Got some tabs, which are pretty standard stuff. Like you've got your UL, with some list items inside of it, with some anchors that don't point anywhere, and then you have to match that up with, each of these divs has to have like a class of tab content, and the one that's active will work. So it's nice. It's got some pretty tables, some cool zebra striping stuff out of the box. Like I said, like you can edit a lot of stuff in your settings file, but to do that you'll need to be using Sass, and we'll get into that tomorrow. But just, out of the box, like you can make it striped and make it rounded for rounded corners. It's got the icon library, of course. It's these are some pretty nice icons too. But if you need to look this up, you just go to Gumby Framework Docs UI Kit. Just click on icons, and then you can just hover over these, and it'll show you the class name that you'll need to use. Okay, so we'll go back up here to the top. Check out some components. Toggles and switches are probably the coolest part of Gumby. What they do is, so you've got this anchor with a class of toggle, right? And this Gumby attribute, this Gumby trigger attribute, that's got the ID of something in it. So what it'll do is it'll, like, whenever you click on this anchor, it'll go find the class, or the element with the ID of something, and it will apply the class of active to that element and to this anchor. So what you can do with that is, like, say you have a button, and you click on that button, you can change the background color to that button and to that something element, and like that's the simplest possible thing you could do with it. There's, like, you're really only limited to your imagination with this. And actually, if we go back to the home page and scroll down here to the bottom and check out this border free site, I think it's kind of messed up right now actually. But like there's some cool stuff that you can do with it. For instance, let's check it out and Tilting Point, see what they do. So if we scroll down, okay, so like this was maybe done with toggles and switches, and if not, you could do this with toggles and switches, just by adding CSS animations and altering your CSS a little bit. So that's just like that's just one example. Like there's an infinite number of things you can do with these toggles and switches. Here, actually, let me open back up this Tilting Point site real quick, and let's refresh it. And then if we scroll down on this site, you can see, like, once I start scrolling down this area, these like little images will start fading in. See, so you could do something like that with toggles and switches, and like an animation CSS library. So like fairly easily. So you can make some pretty cool stuff, like, without actually having to touch a lot of JavaScript. Like the whole reason that they created toggles and switches was because they found that a lot of their JavaScript was just doing styling stuff. So rather than like adding and removing classes with JavaScript, they just said, okay, well, we'll just add them and remove them with these toggles and switches. You need some kind of interaction with the site to activate these toggles and switches, of course. So they do that with the Gumby on attribute, and I'm not sure what all events you can bind to. Maybe like all JavaScript events, so you could look up JavaScript events or like jQuery events, and if not, maybe Gumby events, Google will return something for you. If not, if you have a question or something like that, you can submit it to the community up here, which is a Google Plus community. So you could just ask and the creator of this framework, Adam Chambers, is a monster. Like, he'll go through here and answer these, you know, very, very frequently. Like, you can just scroll through here and see where he's like answering every question that everybody asks. He's pretty amazing with his support for his framework. So kudos to that guy. But yeah, if you have a question, just click on community, type it in. Adam will probably get back to you pretty soon. And that's the best place to learn from the creator of the framework itself, I guess. So yeah, anyway, we can toggle elements like that. You can toggle between elements. So if you wanted to flip something, if you wanted to toggle like the active class between the ID of something and with the class of something else, you could do that. And then, like, you know, if you click on like a button, then it'll give the active class to something. If you click on that button again, it'll take it away from this something ID and give it to something else. So that's how toggling works. Switches work the same way, except they only do it once. So like if you clicked on something, it would apply the class of active to something else. And yeah, if you can't use the class of active, like say like you're making like this big JavaScript application or something, and you're using the class of active all kinds of places, and you've already built your application, and you just, you know, it'd be way too much work to go back through and change it, then you can just use a Gumby class name attribute and make it whatever class name you want. And here's an example of some stuff you can do with these toggles and switches. So like these drawers, if like you click on this open top drawer, it'll open this. Toggle bottom drawers. So you see how toggle works. And then switches. This is an example of a switch. Like if we click on this close all drawers, it'll turn all of them off. And if you want to see what's going on, like if you just inspect that element, this will kind of give you an idea about how these work. So if we click on this this first row right here underneath our buttons, then we click on this open top drawer thing. Okay, yeah, and then expand 14 columns. Okay, so we've got the class of drawer. Got the active class applied to it, like whenever we clicked on that button. So if we close all drawers, it removed the class of active. Now all it's doing is it's saying this drawer right here that has the class of active, it's giving it a height of auto. And whenever we remove the class of active, it gives it a max height of 0. So that way, like you can use these transitions and stuff, and it makes it look like it's sliding down and sliding up. Same thing with the toggle bottom drawers. Like if we close that row, open up this one, and then open up both of these so we can see the drawers. Okay, so the first drawer has the class of active. If we toggle it, it's find the, yeah, okay. So you see the Gumby trigger is drawer 2 and drawer 3. So here's drawer 2, here's drawer 3. So the first time we clicked it, it gave the class of active to the first drawer. Second time we clicked it, it removed the class of active from the first drawer and added it to the second one. And then, as I said, like the last one is the close all drawers thing. It's a switch because it just turns them off. It just activates one time. So if we open this and then toggle one of those drawers open, we can see that they've got class of active, class of active. If we look at this switch, it says Gumby trigger nothing dot drawer. So it's saying, you know, like whenever somebody clicks this, we're going to switch all these drawers to nothing. And see how it got rid of the active class on those. So yeah, and here's another example of something you could do with these toggles and switches. They've made a modal box, a nice little CSS modal box with it. Just by, whenever modal has the class of active applied to it as well, they do all kinds of styling to that class of active, like to this selector in particular. So I mean, like, you can see like you're only limited to your imagination with that kind of stuff. It's really, really powerful. So just the more you use Gumby, like if you get into Gumby and you're really enjoying it, seriously, like get into these toggles and switches pretty hard and just play with them and just try to think of ways to start using them. Once you start getting comfortable with them, you'll be able to like do awesome stuff with your websites that nobody else will be doing, and you'll be able to do it easily. So all right, I'm done talking about toggles and switches. So skip links. Skip links are if you've ever used the local scroll jQuery plugin, that's all they are, and I'm sure you've used these before like a million times. Like this navigation over here uses skip links. So like if we click on fixed positions, it'll slide us down to fixed positions. If we click on toggles and switches, it'll slide us up to toggles and switches. And the cool part about these are they're so easy to use, and there's even like a lot of nice attributes and stuff that you can use within your selector or within your element. So the way these work, so this first element, we've got to wrap our anchor in some kind of element, give it the class of skip link, and then if we want to make it a button, give it some buttony stuff. And then say the anchor is just like a dead anchor. Then you say Gumby go to, and then whatever element has this attribute in it. So this fixed positions, if we just inspect that text right there, scroll down a little bit so we can see. Okay, so if we just inspect that text, okay, right here, this div right here has the data -target fixed positions, and in CSS and JavaScript and everything, you specify that you're talking about an element's attribute, which see if we edit attribute. This is an attribute. Oops. Yeah, I broke it. Hang on. Okay. So yeah, if we inspect that again, yeah, so this data target, that's an attribute. Class is an attribute. Those are attributes. The way to target them is just to wrap them in these hard brackets. So we say Gumby go to this attribute data target, and the one that equals fixed positions, and then we write the rest of our anchor as normal, and then we click on it, and boom, like it slides us down to that. We can go to toggles. We can go all the way back up to toggles and switches, and it's just like the easiest way I've ever seen to add like these skip links, this local scroll stuff. And like I said, like you can add other things, like you can do easing. If you've got the jQuery easing plugin installed, maybe you don't even need the easing plugin. Maybe they use like some CSS easing. I'm not sure, but you can use easing just by applying easing to it. You can use Gumby offset, which is really nice because a lot of times, like whenever you're doing these in-page scrolls and like these in-page links, it'll take you to the element. So like, say we targeted this fixed positions div, but it'll put it right up there at the very top of the page, and you don't want that. So I mean, like you could offset it with that attribute, which is again really nice, and just like a really easy way to do that. Gumby duration, you can set like how long it takes for it to slide in between, like from one point to the next. Okay, so that's skip links. Fixed positions are pretty cool. They're like I said, like the nav bar with the Gumby -fixed equals top. The second the nav bar touch the top of the page, it would just get stuck on the top of the page. You can also set it to, like, you know, if it's 250 pixels, you want it to stop there. And then the Gumby pin thing, the way it works is like whenever like you hit a certain element. So for instance, on this page, if we go down to modals, so like, you know, our nav bar over here is stuck to the top, right? Whenever we get down to modals, and like to the bottom of the page, you see how like it starts going up, like out of, like it's getting clipped now, and now it's stuck, and now it's pinned. So now it's fixed, and now it's pinned. So yeah, and I believe the way that works is just like whenever this element reaches the top of the viewport. So this data target modals, whenever this element hits the top of the viewport, yeah, this element stops being fixed to the top of the page. So again, it's got like some offset stuff, which is pretty nice, and yeah. So I mean, like, that's like the easiest way to do that. So Gumby, like, their components are by far my favorite part of this framework. A lot of other like JavaScript components and stuff like that, or like other frameworks have JavaScript stuff like this, but then like you have to go and do a bunch of JavaScript stuff. Gumby just gives you attributes and just makes them dead simple to use. So it's really cool. Vertical alignment is pretty easy to do. You find like a row or an element, give it the v-align class, and then, you know, all the stuff inside of it will be vertically aligned, which is pretty handy for like you know, say you've got like a logo or something. Like this happens to me a lot. Like you know, say this nav bar up here was a lot taller. Maybe not that tall. That's crazy. Let's say, like, you know, like I wanted padding and stuff on these links, and I wanted them to, like, you know, touch the bottom and top of the page, and then, you know, I would have to position my logo like perfectly there in the middle, like with margin top or something. Well, like once I start shrinking down my page and, you know, everything starts getting smaller, then my logo would just like would kind of mess up. So like, you know, you can vertically align stuff like that, you know, if that's your thing. Retina Images, hang on, are not here. That's just they're just joking with you. Some of the documentation's like a little messed up, like where you know, that guy has to maintain this framework and you know, answer people's questions all the time and be updating this framework and all kinds of stuff. Like it's hard to do all that stuff. So some of the documentation might be a little bit messed up, but he's really good. Like, you know, if you just message him or something, be like, hey, you know, Retina Images doesn't really say anything, so I don't know if you've got like a broken link there or if you wanted to put something there. But he actually does mention Retina Images on like in a different area, I think maybe like in extensions or something. So we'll just skip over that for now. We've already looked at the drawers, and again, this is just like one of those instances where you might just want to copy and paste the markup. Same thing with modal. We've already looked at it. Just copy and paste the markup if you want to use some modals. There's some pretty cool extensions. Yeah, so here, responsive images. And I'm not sure like if you have to install this separately or what. But again, it's one of these things like, and if you do, you know, you just use Bower to install it. You can go look up some tutorials on YouTube or, you know, even NetTuts on how to use Bower. And then you can use it to install it. And then you get like some pretty cool attributes, like where you can just specify like a media query. So like you say, like, the default image size or the default image is going to be this. So like if all else fails, just show this image, please. And then I'm not sure exactly what the Gumby supports. Like I'm not sure what the support stuff is, but I'm sure it's like a type of image or like maybe like or something. I don't know. And then the Gumby media thing will let you specify a media query inside there. And then once you've specified your media query, put a pipe, and then the name or the path to your image that you want displayed like for that media query. And then you can do a comma and just like comma separate all of these, and like you can make as many as you want. So if you want one for desktop, you want one for tablet, you want one for mobile. And the reason you would do all this extra work instead of just feeding it like one big giant image and knowing that it's going to scale down, is that like for mobile and for desktop and stuff like that, you really don't want to be loading like these huge images, and you want to stop loading them as soon as humanly possible. And I'm not sure exactly what technique they use to do this responsive image stuff, but I'm sure it helps a lot. I'm sure it speeds up your users' mobile experiences if you're giving them smaller images. And yeah, so we scroll down, we can see that now it's feeding us this tablet image. So you see it actually says tablet on the image, it's not just text. And get down even smaller. Can't. Oh well. But it would give us mobile too. The shuffle thing is pretty neat. So what you can do is, so like this is the easy way to do source ordering. So you just specify your columns as you normally would, and then with Gumby Shuffle, you would add like a media query, a pipe, and then the order that you want them to show up in. And they're 0 indexed. Okay, so keep that in mind. So like this first one, that's 0. 2 is 1. 3 is 2. Okay. So what this is saying is, whenever you're on a screen and the max width is between 860 and 768, display it, which is like tablet size, display it in reverse order. So put it 3, 2, 1. And we'll just test that. We'll shrink our viewport. Yep. So like a tablet size, just reorders the source of it. Yes, I mean, like that's super handy. Like just being able to do source ordering like that, that's awesome. And yeah, again, you can just comma separate these media queries and your source order, and then pipe separate for your source ordering. Yeah, so like whenever we got down to mobile size, it would say I want it to be 2, 1, 3. 2, 1, 3. So you see how cool that is? So yeah, shuffle's pretty nice. Parallax, like you'll probably see a lot of people that use Gumby use this because it's such a cool little effect. You just get like the black and white image of your office full of your iMacs, and then you give something the class of parallax, and you give that the background image. Like so in your CSS or whatever, you would specify dot parallax as the background of beast mode image, and then you can give it like a scroll rate, a parallax rate, so faster or slower. But yeah, so it's pretty cool. Super easy way to do parallax for all you people that like parallax. There's fit text, which will fill up an area with if you Google fit text, you can see exactly what it does, but just the quick version. So like we've got this H1 element that's like 700 pixels. Well, fit text will resize that. So like right now it's still 700 pixels because we've got the whole margin max width margin auto thing on our big main container. But as this this element gets smaller, like right now it's 609, so will our text. Just as we keep shrinking it. Just keep shrinking it. As it gets smaller and smaller, you can see it's like really starting to shrink really hard and obviously. Yeah, so that's fit text is pretty cool for I don't know, some stuff. Again, you can do the Gumby rate thing. Well, I guess with Parallax it's not rate, it's actually what is it? Parallax. Okay. So with this you can do Gumby rate and it'll say you know, check it and resize it, you know, every 1/5 of a millisecond or some crap like that. Gumby sizes, this is the min and max size, I believe. So, you know, if we wanted to change that, just say we want the max size to be 40 because that text is way too big. And then, I don't know, might have to do something on the back end or with JavaScript or something where like it pre-configures this stuff. I'm not sure. But okay, so that's the extensions. Like I said, like the shuffle thing and Parallax are awesome. Makes sense. This is all the Sass stuff we'll get into next time. JavaScript, it's got all kinds of cool JavaScript stuff. Like just includes Modernizer by default and jQuery by default. And it'll even check and see if you're using an old version of IE. And if you are, it'll feed you the old version of jQuery that you know, the old IE can actually use. And if you're not using old IE, you get the cool new fancy version. So that's good. And it'll also check to see if you can get it, if they can get it on the Google CDN. If it can't, then it'll fall back to a local copy of it. So that's a pretty nice way to instantiate jQuery. Then Gummy's got a ton of these scripts, which you can include or not include. You know, like if you're never going to use tabs, you know, get rid of it. Especially like in production and stuff. Let's see. So I don't know. It's got a lot of stuff you can do with JavaScript. I'm not awesome at JavaScript, so I really can't teach you about it. But you know, if you're interested, you can check it out. It's got some events that you can bind to, like some Gumby specific events that you can bind to, like a Gumby debug thing. So yeah, if you're into JavaScript and doing some cool stuff with it, Gumby is not short on JavaScript. It's got validation stuff, which you should learn. You know, find your form selector, say validation, and then you start like a JSON looking thing where you know, you can say what is required. Just put it in brackets and then curly braces. So, you know, name the name attribute of my input will be email or something like that, and then you can validate it against you know, some jQuery match thing where, you know, this basically will say, okay, this if it's an email, it's got to have an @ sign in it, so that's, you know, some validation right there. Debug stuff, some helper stuff. I don't know. Like I said, if you're cool with JavaScript, then check it out. There's a designer stuff where you can use like Modular Scale, which if you just go to modularscale.com, you can check out a video on Modular Scale. But basically what it does is, like, you know, you've all heard of the golden proportion or the golden ratio or whatever it is. So we just say like the ideal text size, and then like, we can even say the golden section. And it'll calculate the pixels we want. So like we start off with like 16 for our font size. If we want to go up one and make our font size a little bit bigger, then we can do 26 pixels. If we want to make our font size even a little bit bigger, we'll make it 42 pixels. And this calculator will even give you like the EMs and all kinds of other stuff. But Gumby, I believe, packages this by default, maybe, like especially like, with its Sass stuff. But yeah, you can. I'm pretty sure that it uses Team Sass, Scott Kellum's modular scale thing. Let's see. Great tool for function. Oh, okay, maybe it just uses its own modular scale plugin thing. Oh no. Okay, so here's what it does. It uses these values that they've already set up. So by default, Gumby will use the golden ratio. So you see, like, we've got 16. So like the next font size up would be 18. And I'm not sure what the syntax on that is specifically. Let's see. Makes sense. I don't know. Okay, so it's just saying here's some defaults. Maybe the grid, maybe some elements are built around. So here are some numbers that you can use in your designs and stuff like that. So it's kind of weird. If I were you, I'd just use like if you're already using Sass and stuff like that, I would just use Team Sass or Scott Kellum's modular scale mix-in. But they also include a UI kit and some templates here with Gumby. So you can get like a 12 grid or 16 grid, which are the defaults for the basic and the hybrid layouts. And there's also a UI kit, which will have like all the buttons and stuff like that. So like you can open up, all three of these and just start dragging UI kit elements into your grid or duplicating them into your grid, and just start laying out your whole website, and then you can easily convert it because all that stuff's like pretty straightforward for you. Okay, so we've kind of got a feel for the grid, the UI kit, the cool components like with toggles and switches and all that cool stuff. Some of the cool extensions like shuffle and parallax. And so now let's learn the CSS way to get a project started. So first we'll go over to GitHub and we'll just download the zip. Okay, I'll open that up. Delete that crap. Alright, so here's our Gumby master file that we just downloaded. It's got all this cool stuff in it. So what we can do is we can just copy it all. Just do that. Okay. So let's go over to our Gumby folder wherever we want to make a project, and we'll just say, we'll give this a name, project 1. Okay. And then we'll paste all that junk in there. And now drag that file down to Sublime. Alright, so here's our project 1. And we open it up, got our style and Gumby CSS. So here's like the whole framework, which is a lot of stuff. Wow. Okay. So in style, CSS, they poke at you to use Sass, which you should be using if you're a legit web designer, or you consider yourself one, or you've got a job making a bunch of money being a web designer. You should be using a preprocessor. It doesn't matter if it's Less or Sass or Stylus, whatever, but you should test them all out, find the one you like, and use it. On I'll tell you now, Sass is probably the most popular one, so it's not a bad idea to look at that one. So let's see what we got here. Open up index, and here's our default empty page. So if we just open that up, there's nothing on it, right? And then we go into style file, and we'll go ahead and open that up. Okay. So let's call this project 1. Okay. And now let's just go ahead and get started. So first, let's check out the grid. So we'll go to documentation, the grid. And the way the grid works, again, is like you just make a row, and then inside that you can start giving it elements with the class of however many columns, where however many has to equal up to 12 by the end of the row. So, and the way they do it is like this 3 columns thing will have a margin left on it. So yeah. See. So let's make a row, and inside that we'll say we want 6 columns, and we'll say 6 is going to be the text inside there, and we want 2 of those. Okay. What I'm using here is a little plugin called Emmet. If you hold Control-Shift-P, open up your palette up here to do like fuzzy searching stuff, and start typing in package, install package, and then just start typing in Emmet. And if you don't have package control for Sublime, you should get it. Yeah, it's just Google package control Sublime text. Click on installation. Grab this big chunk of code right there and use it. But most of you probably have it. Most of you probably have Emmet. And if you don't, then you might be familiar with Zen coding. That's what this is. So basically, I just type out the class, a little caret to indicate that or an arrow to indicate that I'm going down a notch, and then hit tab. So yeah, now I've got a row with 2 6 columns in it. So 6 plus 6 equals 12. Let's take up the full width of my row. What I like to do, like whenever I'm playing around with new frameworks, is make a star selector thing, and then say background RGBA 000.05. And what this does, why you no work? What? Okay, so so like as an added poke for you to use Sass, this is commented out by default. Which I think that's because if you're using Sass, then it'll compile to one file, so you have less HTTP requests. If you're not using Sass though, and you're just using CSS, then you need to uncomment that line. All right, so there we go. Now we're getting our like little shaded gray background stuff. Something I'm gonna go ahead and tell you is like this font isn't supposed to be serif like that. It's actually supposed to be the Open Sans font, I believe. Let's see. Yeah. So this Open Sans. Yeah. So it should be the Open Sans font. And the way to do that is either in your Sass stuff, you go into fonts and just prefix this this Google APIs thing with HTTP:, or the better way is to put it on a MAMP or WAMP or whatever, and then just access your localhost server. So there. And what that's doing is it's like Google's doing this thing now where they're leaving off the prefix. So there's not an HTTP. There's not, because they don't know if you want HTTP or HTTPS. Servers can figure that stuff out. So Google just leaves it off by default, and then, you know, if you're using like a secure site or whatever, it'll figure it out, and if you're not, then it'll figure it out. So you can either use localhost, or the lazy way to do it is just to prefix it with HTTP. Okay, so now we've got our Open Sans Google font, which is pretty nice looking. We've got a couple rows in there. Let's go ahead and nest a row, just so we can get more comfortable with this. 6 columns. Two of them. There. So these are percentage-based columns. You'll see like that they shrink and expand. It's more obvious if we make it even bigger. Hang on one second. So if we make this row like huge, now you can see them like really shrinking down over time and expanding. So keep that in mind, like whenever you're making stuff, they're not fixed, and that's a good thing. So like for responsive design anyway, it makes it easier to hit more devices at the cost of using like a Photoshop mock-up for everything, which is a lot of work. So anyway, that's the gist of the row stuff, the grid. Now let's say we want a 16 column grid. Okay, so over here in our 6 columns over here, we'll make a row 16 columns. Oh, I'm sorry, call grid. Sorry. Okay. Now we have access to 16 columns over here. So we can say 4 columns times 3, or 4. There. All right. So now, like, we're using our basic grid, which is like this 6 columns and the 6 columns. So that's our basic grid. Inside of our second column, our second half over here, we've turned this into our 16 column or hybrid grid by saying 16 call grid along with the row. So I mean, that's pretty sweet that you have access to like two different things there. 2 different grids. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so that's the grid. Pushing and pulling, again, like if this comes up, you need to do source ordering. Let's see. You don't, like, you want the 10, like the number of columns plus the number that you're pushing to equal 12. Or 16 if you're using the hybrid grid. Same thing with the pushing stuff. You want them to equal 12 with the pulling stuff. So centering columns. So let's just check this out. Let's say, let's get rid of one of these. Let's get rid of both these nested things over here. Okay. And we'll just say, we'll make like a four columns, and we want to prefix that with centered. And then we'll just pretend this is our logo. So you see it's centered now. Tiles, this is very specific. You have to use this markup. Yeah, so you have to use, like, I don't think it has to be an unordered list, but it has to be a list of some type. and then list items within that. So might as well just copy it. So within our 6 columns here, we'll say 2 tiles, or 2 up tiles. You see? It's pretty nice. Now, the cool thing about this is, like, you don't have to specify rows and all that stuff. So, like, you know, if we were going to start just, like, we want things to line up, so we could say 6 columns, 6 times 2, okay? So we refresh, and we've got these 2 6 columns. Now let's say, like let's say we've got PHP or something, and it's adding, and it just like wants to add an item on there. If we do that, then it gets all wonky. So what we have to do is just keep adding rows, you know, just extra markup every time, adding that extra row in there. It's not terrible, but it would be a lot cooler if we could just like start, you know, dumping items in there, and they all just fall into place perfectly. So yeah, that's what the whole 2 up thing does. So that's pretty nice. So yeah, like if you've got like a product listing or something like that, that's an example of like when you use the 2 up stuff, or the tiles. I mean, showed you how to use nested grids. So the UI kit, again, it's just like you've got to wrap elements and this kind of stuff. So let's make a, let's get rid of that nested thing. We'll just put a button right over here. Okay. Let's hang on one second. We'll push this off. Okay. So maybe if I change that to HTML, I won't have the background color. Yeah, it still does. Okay. Anyway, so now we've got, you know, our button right there. If we try it like without the div, this is what happens. So if we just apply like medium button or medium primary button to that anchor, then like we get this weird colored one that doesn't have you know, padding and all that stuff. So it's just easier. Just go ahead and wrap buttons and stuff like that. And I'm not sure if you can just make these a span. Yeah, you can just make those a span if you want. Okay. So that's how you would use buttons. Oh, and then if we wanted to, we can make those buttons pretty just by applying the class of pretty. Give them the cool gradient flavor to it. Yeah. So, yeah, I hope this was like a good brief introduction. Maybe not so brief, but and a good like overview of Gumby. In the next one, I'm going to teach you how to use Claymate, which is like the cool way to make projects, and how to use Sass and how to use Compass and all that stuff. And we're actually going to make a web page with Gumby using Sass and all that stuff and Compass. So stay tuned.